everybody. We are going to move on to our grand tradition. If you're unfamiliar with our grand tradition, it's an event sponsored by Grand Air Services. Their vision was to create something that honors people who have made a lasting contribution in our fishing community, whether it is captains, anglers, or advocates who have fought to preserve the tradition we hold so dear in this community. I'm going to bring some people up. I beg you, I know we're all having fun. This is important to this community. Please listen. If you have a conversation, I don't mind you have it. Just take it to the back and keep it quiet, okay? So we can be respectful of everybody else around. This evening, we are honoring two captains who have contributed to this community are immense. One who was fishing on this island when captains rented their tackle, and another who played a major role in not only starting the Chamber of Commerce, but the world's Richest Tarpon tournament itself. But you don't need to hear that from me. Tonight, we proudly honor Johns Knight Sr. and Johns Knight Jr. for our grand tradition. I am going to get Mr. Johns Knight to come on up. He is going to tell us some wonderful stuff that you might not have known. It's some good history. Please listen. Mr. Johns Knight, everybody.
Everybody hear me at this?
No.
You got to hold it close.
Kiss it.
Okay.
Yes, it closer.
Rest it right on your chin.
Yep, got it now.
There you go.
Okay. All right, I'm not a very good speaker, and I wrote my stuff down, and I'm not a very good reader, so please be patient. A little genealogy in here, and then once we get to the island, then I'm going to tell some stories about it. But my people actually settled in the west coast of Florida in 1835, and they were into cattle. And then they moved on down to the Charlotte Harbor area in 1845 into Charlotte Harbor, and then to Boca Grande in 1906. My grandfather started guiding and commercial fishing around 1910. That date, the way I established, it's got to be close to that, is I had a letter one time that his client wrote him in 1915. It was a dated letter, and said to have the boat ready with all the equipment that they had had in the previous years, and that was in 1915. And a lot of the people, like I say, they come and fish for tarpon, and then they started doing picnic lunches and shelling and going to the birds on some of the islands in the evenings, and just showing them basically a good time. And a day back then, now you go 5 hours, 6 hours a day. Back then it was when you got up at the daylight and you fished till dark. But those things has changed over the years. Once we got down past my grandfather, my dad, John Sr., he started in the late 1930s himself. And he had joined his two older brothers, Harold and George, which are already guides in Boca Grande, and then later the younger brother, Francis. So there was four of them guiding here with their daddy, George Sr. My Uncle George, during World War II, when he got through the war, he went on to college, so he didn't continue with the fishing. He just tarpon fished for 4 or 5 years and then got out of it. But Harold and my daddy and Francis, they started making some changes in the way the fishing was done, or the way the charters ran. One thing was the tackle. Everybody always rented their tackle. And, as there got to be more and more guides, it was a little tougher to be able to grab a rod if you picked up a charter at the last minute. You may not get all the rod you needed. So they decided to buy their own fishing tackle. And they were the first two to buy their own tackle, Harold and John's. And then later, another thing they did was it was quite a thing whenever you're charter got back to the dock, because back in the early days, everybody fished on so much for your bait, so much for your hooks, so much for, so you had to build up an invoice plus a certain amount for the captain. So there was an argument and a fight every time you got back to the dock. Every guy was there fighting with this line about the price or how many bait they used. So they started doing a flat rate fee, which is what everybody does now that I know of. I think everybody charges, just a flat rate, whatever that be. And then, let's see, I got to turn the page. Then the brothers went off to World War II, and they got back in the 1950s. Their daddy, or they got back in 46. Their daddy passed away in 50. So around 46, three of the brothers, my daddy, Harold and Francis, they started Knight Brothers Boat Yard. They started out first just doing boat repairs and simple stuff like that. And then they decided to start building some boats. So they got to building some small skiffs and 20-foot boats and stuff for fish and tarpon. And then later, Francis built him a 34-foot boat, and my daddy built him a 35-foot boat. They did all this while they were still chartering. They fished there, they worked boat yard all day, fished most of the night, and that continued right on. And then come into a third generation. That's me and my brothers. My older brother, Thomas, he started in 1962, and he also managed the Mercabo, the mercury testing facility over there for years, the lodge part of it, and he also ran their 45-foot sports fishing boat. And although now he's retired, he still does do an occasional trip for, special people he's fished for, a long time. They come down and want him to run a boat or something for him, he'll still do it. And then the second one of the third generation was myself. I started in 1967. And my younger brother started in 1970. We joined up with our dad there at the boat yard and ran pretty regular. And finally, we decided we needed some bigger boats, better boats. So we built a 45-foot boat for my brother Gene, and then later we built a 47-foot boat for myself. That was 1985. And then once we built the 47 foot, the Moonraker 2, then we built a mold off of that one and started building fiberglass boats. And we built one boat called My Lady Faye, pretty nice boat, and then sold out to the Gasparilla Inn Marina in the Gasparilla Inn Hotel in 1989, and they started a dry storage facility there. And let's see here, and that's where it leads up to Brian, my nephew. He's the fourth generation. Brian's manager of the Inn Marina now. He still runs charters in the evenings. And then Chad, my younger brother's son, he's over working irrigation business with my younger brother. And then my son, Eric, he's managed this marina, as a matter of fact. He used to manage it. He built and designed a 28-foot boat, which he run for charter for a number of years and still runs some charters. And he grew up in the original Knight Brothers boat yard, just like it was when my grandfather and my father both worked it, and then me and my brothers. And Eric's boating experience, he's fished charters, run charters in several different states and several different countries. So he's quite knowledgeable about the waters. And I've put down a few things that to me was kind of amazing that I had seen in my lifetime around the pass. First thing I seen was a whale shark. I seen him just north of the North Bar and probably a mile further offshore. I only seen him the one time. I was running in from offshore, followed along there. He was cruising down the north side of the bar. And finally I turned and went on in the pass, and he turned and went towards the beach. A number of years later, that I don't know that it was the same one, but they spotted a whale shark off Venice, and they've seen him up there 2 or 3 times. Whether it's the same one, I don't know, but it was pretty amazing to me to see a whale shark. And then the other thing I seen was trunkback turtle. Never seen one before, and I saw this first one. I thought it was a loggerhead on top of the water, loggerhead turtle. Got over there, and it was the head of a trunkback turtle. I mean, these things are tremendous in size. And I've seen him twice. Once I saw with Cappy Joyner. He was going along there, and he got on the radio, hollered, "Johns, look over here." Sure enough, there that thing was. So I've seen him twice. And probably the most unique thing I ever seen, and I was kind of facing offshore on the outside pan, and Ned Vanderree was coming up the pass. You know, we were looking for some fish, and 3 or 4 fish rolled right between us. And I got a call from Ned on the radio. He says, "Johns, did you see that?" I said, "Yes, I did." It was an orange tarpon. And I don't mean, Cappy, I told Cappy about it. Cappy says, "It's probably a fish up the river, you know." I said, "No, he wasn't that yellow gold. This was an orange tarpon. He was the color of an orange." So not too much was said about it. But about 2 years later, up the harbor, we was sitting there, incoming tide, sitting there at the Intercoastal Waterway. Cappy was looking my way, I was looking his way. And all of a sudden, 3 or 4 fish rolled, and there was that orange tarpon. The second time I seen him, Cappy come on the radio. He says, "Johns, I just seen it." He says, "That damn fish is orange." And, you know, at that point, you know, it's been a couple years later, but I finally decided I'm going to look this up on the internet. And I found out there is a tarpon that has a complete orange head all the way back past his gills and on his fins. And this thing showed up in Boca Grande Pass. And when I was reading this article about it just the other day, it said the last one was caught on a hook and line in 1935. There was one, I believe it's this year, it's either last year or this year, I forgot to look at the date of it, that has just been caught off Anna Maria, which is the first one since 1935 that's been caught. So I saw these fish 10, 12 years ago, and then this one showed up at Anna Maria. And then I was blessed, you know, you can fish a lifetime, and you're just lucky at whatever size fish you get. I mean, that's just the way it is. But I was lucky enough that, as far as I know, he still holds the record, 234 pounds. And there's 2 replicas on this island of that fish. One of them used to be at the Gasparilla Inn Hotel. I don't know what they did with theirs. But the other one, which I gave to Boca Grande Club, and they donated him to the Chamber of Commerce when they remodeled years ago. And the Chamber of Commerce gave him to the school to put on display. And I went over and talked to them, and I'm supposed to get the fish back if they ever decide to move him again. But anyway, 234 pounds, that was quite a fish. And I told Gary I would say this at the beginning because I was wanting to clarify something that I've heard ever since we started this tournament years ago. The Chamber of Commerce, we used to be so poor, we did not have an office. This was back in the very beginning days. So sitting in a meeting in a barred room we decided, I brought the idea up, we need to come up with some money somewhere. So I mentioned, let's start us a tournament. Jack Harper had been running, week tournament. By that time, he was running like every other week. He'd run a tournament. I said, let's have a tournament like Jack's having, but let's have us a unique tournament. Let's have us a big tournament. And so Kim Maith, which was the manager of the Boca Grande Club, he was vice president. He came up, met with us at our boatyard, and two of us sat there and we made all the rules for the tournament. We set the boundaries, the whole 9 yards, and it was a Chamber of Commerce event. The Boca Grande Club was our sponsor. They were our largest sponsor. We had multiple sponsors that year. Hell, we had a pickup truck, we had a diamond ring, a Mercury outboard. I mean, we had a list of stuff. But anyway, we got the thing going, and it went over big enough that we limited it $100,000 prize, maximum of 50 boats. The next year, there was so many people wanted in the tournament. The first year, on the second year, we raised it to 60 boats, and we, instead of having a $100,000 tournament, we went to $100,000 for first prize, and 50 for second, and 30 for third, I think. And that's not counting the side bet. So we had a pretty successful tournament for quite a few years, and fishes started slowing down a little bit. And the purpose of the tournament was to lengthen our season. On the 4th of July, you would have 200 boats in Boca Grande Pass. And on the 5th of July, there would be 6. So that's why we held the tournament the second week of July, the week after the 4th. And from that year on, for many years, every guy fished to the end of July, and about half of them went on into August. And everybody, plenty of tarpon. But we've had some lesser fishing in the last few years, and I think a lot of it is due to pressure. We have to all take responsibility. We're not as go around the fish as we used to be, and that kind of thing. So the pressure, I think, drives them out a little earlier. But anyway, that kind of concludes what I got to say, Gary.
All right. Mr. John's night, everybody. And I'm thinking what he was getting at is somebody needs to donate a truck for a prize next year. Let's get it going. All right, next I'm going to call up Miss Betsy to speak a few words on the nights.
I just yelled, put him on the pork chop. It's all good. It's all good.
I'll try not to talk, and I'm not going to cry. John's told a whole lot of what I was thinking about telling, because he said he wasn't a public speaker, but I think he did damn good. I'm going to start telling him I can't talk and sit in the audience. Let him do it. I've had the pleasure of working with John through those beginning years of the tournament. I came in on as fun, and I think it was 86 when the Boca Grande Club first did it, 86, 80, 83? Okay. Anyhow, 83 when they first started it, and then when they decided they didn't want to do it any longer, then they did move it over officially to the Chamber of Commerce. But so I was a volunteer on it for a long time, and then I did become tournament director for, I don't remember how many years it was, but it was when we had 60 boats, we had all those big prizes, we had huge sponsors, and I'm happy to turn it over to Casey and her team the last few years, and I think it's getting bigger and better every year. I just want to say we've had a total change in the climate and the community and everything, but when it comes time for tarpon to come in, it's still our family. It doesn't matter where you live, where you come, what street you live on, where you park. But Tarpon are still our family. And they're the most fun. They make our island fun. They make it alive and show the love. Just a few minutes to talk about the Knight family. I had the privilege of knowing John Sr. Wayne says I'm going to cry. So, of the Knight family, I knew John's father and his mother. And a lot of you people know Isabel and know how dedicated she was to the fishermen. But the Knight family was, just as dedicated. And if it wasn't, Virginia would be on that radio, and in the middle of the night, or when everything was going on, when they had that boatyard, there was always somebody manning the radio. And at that time, we had the boatyard, Knight Brothers, we had Whiddens had a radio, Boca Pass had a radio, everybody had radios in their homes and everything. If there was a distress call, the Knight Brothers were there probably before anybody else was there, or they had their boats geared up and were ready. And all the captains I've heard through the years, and one of the people I heard talk about it a lot was Robert Johnson and Johnny Johnson, who were the pilots on the island, and then they were able to call on them many, many times to help with the ships, with a boat being stranded, with somebody broke down, whatever. The Knight Brothers family was there, and we appreciate it. And the boats that they built, from what I understand, they built them, Johns and Francis and George and them, they built them because they knew the waters. And they had fished in them. They knew that V hull and a larger beam was going to take those waves and take that tide and be able to go out in the pass. And they knew that. And they built them to be a sturdy boat, to be a good, comfortable fishing boat, and also to be a safety boat to haul other people's boats in or whatever. And I do remember that. I remember John Sr. Was our sheriff here for, I think, 26 years. Anybody that's heard any of Dumplin's stories, you've heard many, many tales that they played on John's in Virginia, and they had a good spirit about them, but you didn't want to mess with John's when he was serious. We were very fortunate to have them as part of our community growing up. I think the Knight family has been in the state of Florida probably longer than most any other family. What research that we've done, Mary Vickers, Knight Vickers, Francis's daughter, has done a lot of research, and John's has too, and they go back, and I actually was just at a wedding of Knight family that I went to, John's cousins who I know, and he doesn't even know all of them, that are from Tampa. But it's just, we all kind of are all family, and each one of our families has a huge history here, and we're so thankful for that family. One thing I want to give John's tribute for is he's done a lot of things. He was in the chamber. He was president of the chamber for years. He was involved in the tournaments. But then he became part of the History Center. And he was president of the History Center recently from 2022 to just recently. He's now the vice president. But one thing he did was he put his heart and soul into this legacy of this new History Center. He spent at least 3 years, probably longer, and he still is, working on getting that History Center put together and as much of the right history and correct history as we can get. We all know everybody tells history in a different way. He and I have different opinions all the time. I know it this way, he knows it that way. We look at this paper, we look at that paper. But it's all history, and if you have not been to the History Center on Banyan and Park Avenue area at the Crenshaw House, you have to make a point to go there, because John's was on call 24 hours a day for months working with the group that helped put it together, and he was hands-on, and put his heart and soul into it. And it's open on Monday through Saturday. And we just finished, we were also on a committee together. We put together the Fishing Guides Hall of Fame. There's a wall in there, and it's called the Fishing Guide Hall of Fame. Beautiful artwork by Gary Albritton. We have panels that we were recognizing the captains from back like we try to go back to 1910, 1906, as many as we could go back and find. And we kind of came up to the 1960s that we have, and also we have what we call cornerstone members, who are the cornerstones. We feel that there was a team of us that worked on it hard. The cornerstones are our foundation. They're that one person, one community member that was the standing block and still is, if they're still living, if they weren't. They were the mainstays who helped this community come together from the very beginning, this fishing community, because our whole town was all about fishing back then. Everything revolved around fishing because that's where the living was. If you weren't working for the phosphate company, Seaboard Railroad, you had something to do with the fishing industry, and that means the tourist industry and bringing people into the town. So it's a great display. You can go in there and spend 30 minutes, you can go in there and spend 3 hours. But when you go in there, think about all the work John's put in. Thank you, Johns.
Let's give it up for Betsy. And she is correct. If you have not checked out the Boca Grande Historical's new building there at Crown and Shield, it is awesome. Bring your kids in there. That is the history. That is why you are here tonight. It was started way back then, and there's so much information there, so check it out. Next, I have Teresa O'Connor. And y'all are doing great, by the way.
I will try to make this short and sweet. I have a different perspective than, obviously, Betsy and John's. Growing up here on the island, I was in a very unique situation. It was very different when I grew up here, as most of you know. Some of my first memories are always with the Knight family. I did not know that my dad was not actually one of the Knight brothers until later in life. In my eyes, John's was just part of our family. Yes, even family vacations in Tennessee. I'm not gonna snort. My dad was a deputy, just as John Sr. was, and we ran one of the numerous Knight brothers boats. Growing up on the Moonraker was just part of my life back then, and I didn't understand nor truly appreciate the foundation and legacy that John's and his family have had. As an adult, I now understand the importance of the Knight brothers boats and the impact their entire family has had on this island. The boatyard was not just for building boats, it was assisting in building a legacy of tarpon fishing. Behind the scenes, John's was always available to lend a helping hand, whether or not it was to assist the Coast Guard, help fix an engine, or pitch in all the cash in his pocket for the BOMO Kids Tarpon Tournament. John's love for building boats was not over after the boatyard was sold. He eventually went into business with his son Eric and built more boats. Although I'm not old enough to have been here for those golden years of the island, I am old enough to have some amazing memories. John's was not just a fishing guide. He's a true pillar and legend of this island, and we are fortunate to still have him with us today. As always, John's continues to assist and help where needed. As an adult, I now understand and appreciate the impact that John's had on our family, our fishing industry, the community, and the preservation of the island history. He has volunteered numerous hours for organizations, especially the Chamber, BIPS, and the Historical Society. People like John's are part of what made Boca Grande so special, what continues to keep the history and spirit alive today. On behalf of the Caca Valley family, thank you for allowing us to be part of your family and let us believe that Moonraker was ours.
Teresa O'Connor, everybody. Let's give one more big round of applause for John Knight Jr. and Sr., everybody. Thank you so much.